At the SpaceX Control Center in Hawthorne, California, flight controllers are watching over the progress of Dragon in the overnight hours on this Saturday morning, making sure that all of Dragon's systems are in excellent shape, which they are, as it moves into the final phase of its approach for docking to the station about an hour and 36 minutes from now. Docking is scheduled at 6:16 a.m. Central Time, 7:16 a.m. Eastern Time. Here in the International Space Station Flight Control Room here at the Johnson Space Center, again, the Orbit 1 team of flight controllers on duty. They are led this morning by Flight Director Ronak Dave, who is the lead flight director for this SpaceX resupply mission called CRS, or Commercial Resupply Mission 30, to the International Space Station. He is at the bottom of your screen. To his right is spacecraft communicator David Brenna, who will be talking to the expedition crew aboard the International Space Station as the morning moves along. As Dragon continues its flawless approach to the International Space Station in the Central Asian desert at the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan, the Soyuz MS-25 crew is about to board the vehicle for the second time in a couple of days. Soyuz Commander Oleg Novitsky, joined by NASA astronaut Tracy Dyson and Belarus spaceflight participant Marina Vasilevskaya, are ready for their launch attempt coming up at 7:36 and 10 seconds a.m. Central Time, 8:36 and 10 seconds a.m. Eastern Time this morning. This launch attempt today comes 2 days after a last-second abort of the launch on Thursday, in which the countdown reached the T-minus 20-second mark before the ground launch sequencer cut off the countdown due to the detection of low voltage in the electrical system of the Soyuz 2.1A booster's first stage. The engineers down at Baikonur went through a series of troubleshooting procedures, changed out batteries in the Soyuz first stage, retested them, and everything is set to go this morning for a launch to the International Space Station. Unlike Thursday, which would have resulted in a fast-track two-orbit 3-hour journey from the launch pad to the station, today's launch, the orbital mechanics, is such that it will be a 34-orbit, 2-day journey to the station, with the crew in the descent module of the Soyuz capsule for about 48 hours, with docking scheduled at 10:09 a.m. Central Time, 11:09 a.m. Eastern Time on Monday morning. This in turn pushes the departure of NASA astronaut Laurel O'Hara with Novitsky and Vasilevskaya to return to Earth on their Soyuz MS-24 spacecraft. That return to Earth now is targeted for April 6th. And just a note, we will be segueing almost immediately out of our Dragon docking coverage this morning into our launch coverage from the Baikonur Cosmodrome. That will begin right at the top of the hour at 7 a.m. Central Time, 8 a.m. Eastern Time. So you'll be seeing all of the activity associated with pre-launch events preceding the crew's arrival at the launch pad. That launch coverage again coming up at 8 a.m. Eastern Time on NASA Television and NASA Plus. Dragon's approach to the International Space Station will pass several gate posts, if you will. There's a large elliptical oval-shaped region called the approach ellipsoid that the Dragon cargo craft, the unpiloted cargo craft, will enter a short time from now. at a distance of about 1 kilometer below the station. Once inside the approach ellipsoid, integrated operations will be underway between the flight controllers at SpaceX's Control Center in Hawthorne and the flight control team here in Houston. The inner circle, if you will, which is basically the neighborhood of the International Space Station, if you wish to call it that, is called the Keep Out Sphere. That's where the Dragon spacecraft will begin the terminal phase of its approach for rendezvous and docking, a slow, glacial, methodical approach that will start about 220 meters above the Harmony module's zenith docking port, all the way into contact and capture. The Dragon cargo craft now about 4 kilometers away from the International Space Station. We're about 16 minutes away from a mid-course burn of the Draco thrusters. Again, this is a very small tweak of the Draco engines that will fine-tune Dragon's path to the International Space Station, all automated. The cargo vehicle, unpiloted, should reach a distance of about 1,000 meters away from the International Space Station some 21 minutes from now. Aboard the International Space Station, which is currently flying over South Africa, NASA astronauts Mike Barrett and Laurel O'Hara will be inside the cupola a short time from now, setting up all of their rendezvous tools and monitoring equipment to keep an eye on the approach of Dragon for its contact and capture to the zenith or space-facing port of the Harmony module. Once that is complete, an umbilical will be extended between Dragon and Harmony, and that will be hooked up to provide station power to Dragon for the duration of its 5-week stay at the International Outpost. Once pressure checks and leak checks are conducted at the docking interface between Dragon and the station, the hatch will be opened on the station side of the docking interface, and then the Dragon hatch will be open to about 9, 10 o'clock this morning Central Time to allow the station crew on this Saturday to do a bit of heavy lifting as they move precious cargo and science experiments out of Dragon into the station to set up shop for their 5 weeks of scientific research. As we said, we're keeping track on two critical activities today. While Dragon is approaching the station for its docking, this photo from Bill Ingalls, NASA chief photographer, who's in Kazakhstan in Baikonur, shows the Soyuz MS-25 crew, Tracy Dyson on the left, Oleg Novitsky, the Soyuz commander, in the center, and Belarus spaceflight participant Marina Vasilevskaya on the right, as they were prepared to board a bus in front of their cosmonaut hotel crew quarters. A short time ago, they made their way to the suit-up facility in the Baikonur Cosmodrome, suited up in their Sokol launch and entry suits, and then were driven to Pad 6 at Site 31 at the Baikonur Cosmodrome, where they have just pulled up, ready to board their vehicle for final pre-launch preparations. The vehicle currently being fueled for launch at 7:36 and 10 seconds a.m. Central Time, 8:36 and 10 seconds a.m. Eastern Time. Back here in Mission Control in Houston, flight controllers are working with their SpaceX counterparts in Hawthorne, California, monitoring the precise path of the Dragon cargo craft for its docking to the International Space Station, all of its systems in good shape. Currently 3.4 kilometers distance between Dragon and the Harmony module of the International Space Station, which is its destination today, closing at a rate of about 3.5 meters per second. The next milestone will be a brief firing of the Draco thrusters in what is called a mid-course correction burn, a fine tuning burn to refine the Dragon's path to the station. That should be coming up about 11.5 minutes from now. If you're just joining us, we are providing live coverage of the SpaceX Dragon cargo ship's arrival at the International Space Station. Also preparing for our live coverage of the launch of Soyuz MS-25 from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. Dragon is currently 3 kilometers away from the station in a phasing coast that will take it to a point called Waypoint Zero inside the approach ellipsoid, a large elliptical or oval-shaped region around the International Space Station. We should be about 30 minutes away from a point at which Dragon would be 400 meters directly below the station along the R-bar, or the radial vector to the Earth, an imaginary line that's drawn between the space station itself and the Earth. And as we track the progress of Dragon to the station, another picture from NASA Chief Photographer Bill Ingalls showing Tracy Dyson, NASA astronaut, about to embark on her third flight into space as she underwent the pressure checks, the leak checks on her Sokol launch and entry suit inside the Building 254 integration facility at the Baikonur Cosmodrome before the crew, which includes Dyson, Soyuz commander Oleg Novitsky, and spaceflight participant from Belarus, Marina Vasilevskaya, were driven by bus out to the launch pad. The crew has now boarded the Soyuz MS-25, with the countdown now at T-minus 2 hours and 40 minutes until their launch. This is Mission Control Houston. We're in a brief loss of signal through our tracking and data relay satellite system. At this hour, the SpaceX Dragon cargo craft is on a precise path for a docking to the International Space Station about an hour and 18 minutes from now. Docking is scheduled a bit earlier than previously scheduled. The current docking time approximately 6:16 a.m. Central Time, 7:16 a.m. Eastern Time. Everything going by the book so far with Dragon's approach to the station, now at a distance of about 2.3 kilometers away, closing at a rate of about 2.5 meters per second. The next milestone coming up in about 9.5 minutes. That will be a brief firing of the Draco thrusters in a mid-course correction burn to more precisely fine-tune Dragon's path into the approach ellipsoid and then ultimately into the keep-out sphere for a long looping maneuver to a point about 220 meters above the station for its final approach for contact and capture. Dragon, as we mentioned, is carrying some 3 tons of supplies and science experiments to the station. Science, of course, the major objective of activities aboard the International Space Station. Following the launch of the 30th commercial resupply mission on Dragon to the station on Thursday, the science experiments and technology demonstrations on their way for arrival at the complex include studies of sea ice thickness, photosynthesis in space, and nanoparticle arrangements in quantum dot solar cells. The SpaceX Dragon is delivering a new set of sensors for the Astrobee robots on board the station that will support automated 3D sensing, mapping, and situational awareness functions. These systems could support future gateway and lunar surface missions by providing automated maintenance and service scanning using rovers to be launched to the lunar surface as part of the Artemis program. Additionally, the spacecraft will deliver a small satellite called Burst Cube that is designed to study gamma ray bursts that occur when 2 neutron stars collide. This satellite could help increase our coverage of the gamma ray sky, improving our chances of studying bursts both with light and gravitational waves or ripples in space-time that would be detected by ground-based observatories. Finally, SpaceX, the Dragon cargo craft, is delivering sample hardware for an initiative called GEARS that will test different locations of the space station for antibiotic-resistant microbes. The in-flight gene sequencing could show how these bacteria adapt to the space environment, providing knowledge that informs measures to protect astronauts for future long-duration missions. This is Mission Control Houston. We're just a few minutes away from reacquiring a downlink television signal from the International Space Station. We're in a gap between satellites in our tracking and data relay satellite system at the moment. As was heard on the loops, the mid-course correction burn by Dragon's Draco thrusters was conducted. Essentially a small tweak to fine-tune Dragon's path to the International Space Station. We should be arriving at a point about 1,000 meters directly below the station in some 5 minutes. Dragon's path is spot on for an expected docking to the zenith or space-facing port of the Harmony module at 6:16 a.m. Central Time, 7:16 a.m. Eastern Time. Once Dragon makes contact and capture to the docking mechanism on the zenith port of the Harmony module, a series of 12 hooks will close to form a hard mate between Dragon and the station. An umbilical will be extended to hook up to the station's power system so the Dragon can draw station power for the duration of its 5 weeks, delivering some 3 tons of science equipment and supplies to the expedition crew on board the station. That expedition crew, awaiting the arrival of Dragon this morning, is led by Station Commander Oleg Kononenko of Roscosmos, along with his Roscosmos crewmates Nikolai Chub and Alexander Grabenkin, along with NASA astronauts Matt Dominic, Mike Barrett, Jeanette Epps, and Laurel O'Hara. Barrett and O'Hara crew on board the station are going to be in the cupola a short time from now the arrival of Dragon this morning. Have their tools and monitoring equipment set up so that they can Station Commander Oleg Kononenko of Roscosmos along with tabs on Dragon's approach for its docking to the Harmony module's zenith port. Once leak checks are conducted later this morning, the hatches between the two vehicles, Dragon and the station, will be open, and cargo unloading will commence. That will occupy most of the day on Saturday for the crew members on board the International Space Station. We're about to come AOS, acquisition of signal on our tracking and data relay satellite system. Dragon continues its course toward the complex. Now just 800 meters away from the International Space Station, where it will move to a point directly below the station, then in front of the station, then above the complex, inside the so-called keep-out sphere, to begin its final approach for contact and capture to the Zenith docking port on the space-facing side of the Harmony module. All of the rendezvous burns for Dragon have been on the money. No issues. All of the Dragon systems in great shape, being monitored by SpaceX flight controllers in Hawthorne, California, as well as the team here in Mission Control in Houston. Down at the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan, we are now 2 hours and 24 minutes until the launch of Soyuz MS-25. This photo just received from NASA Chief Photographer Bill Ingalls, showing the crew at the launch pad on the stairs, about to board their vehicle. From top to bottom, Belarus spaceflight participant Marina Vasilevskaya, NASA's Tracy Dyson, and at the bottom, Soyuz Commander Oleg Novitsky. The crew is now strapped into their seats in the descent module of the Soyuz MS-25. The vehicle, the Soyuz 2.1A booster, is fully fueled. This second launch attempt coming 2 days after the countdown was halted at the T-minus 20-second mark by the automated launch sequencer, when an issue of low voltage was detected in the electrical system of the booster's first stage. The crew was never in any danger at that time on Thursday. They were extracted from the vehicle after the countdown and the launch attempt was scrubbed for the day. They were taken back to their Cosmonaut Hotel crew quarters, where they have brushed up on some training and preparing for today's second launch attempt. Once we complete our SpaceX docking coverage this morning, we will segue at 7 a.m. Central Time, 8 a.m. Eastern Time into our launch coverage from Baikonur, with launch scheduled at 7:36 and 10 seconds a.m. Central Time, 8:36 and 10 seconds a.m. Eastern Time. And there's our view of our cargo ship, the SpaceX Dragon, that is currently now 600 meters below the International Space Station, moving into the approach ellipsoid for its looping turn, if you will, around a racetrack pattern called the keep-out sphere. Soon it will reach a point 400 meters directly below the station along the radial vector, or the R-bar. Then in front of the station along the direction of travel of the station, called the velocity vector. Dragon on automated approach will move to a position directly above the station to a point called Waypoint 1 for the final approach and docking to the Zenith, or space-facing port of the Harmony module. The International Space Station is currently flying 262 miles over the border between India and China, about to begin a northwest to southeasterly swing on this orbit of the Earth, in an orbit inclined 51.6 degrees to either side of the equator. SpaceX flight controllers in Hawthorne telling Flight Director Ronak Dave here in Mission Control that Dragon is go to move toward Waypoint 0 and to pass Waypoint 0, which is the point 400 meters directly below the station, and begin its looping turn. That will basically be clockwise if you were looking at a clock, to reach a point directly above the station for final approach. Flying 262 miles over China, the SpaceX Dragon cargo craft about to move into an orbital sunset as it continues its flawless approach for a docking to the International Space Station at about 6:16 a.m. Central Time, 7:16 a.m. Eastern Time. A good view of Dragon, now just 430 meters away from the International Space Station. Inside the approach ellipsoid, about to make its loop to a point some 220 meters directly above the station, with docking scheduled about 55 minutes from now. Dragon has executed all of its rendezvous burns in excellent shape, initially raising its altitude following its launch on Thursday from the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station on the SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket, raising its orbit in a stair-step approach to match that of the International Space Station, and then refining its course toward the station, all the burns automated, and all have been executed in flawless fashion. Once again, a great view of the SpaceX Dragon cargo craft carrying some 3 tons of supplies and science experiments for the Expedition 70 and soon 71 crews on board the station. The 7 crew members on board the complex: Oleg Kononenko, Nikolai Chub, Alexander Grabenkin, Matt Dominic, Mike Barrett, Jeanette Epps, and Laurel O'Hara, are waiting for the arrival of SpaceX. The NASA crew members will be unloading SpaceX cargo later today after the Dragon's hatches open. That will come shortly after leak checks are conducted and the hatches are open between the Dragon and the International Space Station. This is Mission Control Houston. The Cargo Dragon is approaching the 220-meter mark away from the International Space Station. As it continues its on-target approach for a docking to the zenith port of the Harmony module of the International Space Station. That is scheduled for about 6:16 a.m. Central Time, 7:16 a.m. Eastern Time. You can see the flashing strobe light on the forward portion of the Dragon cargo craft as it continues its approach to a point some 200 meters above the International Space Station. The crew has reported that it has a good visual sighting of Dragon, currently flying in an orbital sunset, about to move off the coast of China and move from northwest to southeast across the Pacific Ocean. This is Mission Control Houston. Again, a view over the northwest Pacific Ocean of the SpaceX Dragon cargo craft as it continues its approach to the International Space Station, about to reach what is called Waypoint 1, a position about 220 meters directly above the station, where it will initiate its final approach for an anticipated docking at about 6:16 a.m. Central Time, 7:16 a.m. Eastern Time, to the zenith or space-facing port of the station's Harmony module. While Dragon is in the home stretch of its two-day journey from its launch at the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida on Thursday to a docking to the station this morning, Down at the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan, NASA astronaut Tracy Dyson, Soyuz commander Oleg Novitsky of Roscosmos, and spaceflight participant Marina Vasilevskaya of Belarus are suited up in their Sokol launch and entry suits, strapped into their seats in the descent module of the Soyuz MS-25 spacecraft, ready for a second launch attempt today, just 2 hours and 4 minutes from now. The Soyuz 2.1A booster is fully fueled, ready for launch at 7:36 and 10 seconds a.m. Central Time, 8:36 and 10 seconds a.m. Eastern Time. The countdown, once again on Thursday for the initial launch attempt, was halted at the T-minus 20-second mark by the ground launch sequencer at Pad 6, Site 31 at the Baikonur Cosmodrome, when a low voltage reading was detected in the electrical system of the booster's first stage. Batteries were changed out and retested on Friday, and everything is set to go to send Dyson, Novitsky, and Vasilevskaya on a 2-day journey, a 34-orbit journey, based on the orbital mechanics available today, and a docking to the International Space Station's Prishal module on Monday morning at 10:09 a.m. Central Time, 11:09 a.m. Eastern Time. We will begin our launch coverage from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan at 7 a.m. Central, 8 a.m. Eastern Time, following the Dragon docking to the International Space Station.
connected to air quality monitor power supply 1003, which is connected to switch 3 on the PS120.
And Matt, that's a good readback on the power.
That air. No, I understand. I'm showing for procedure step 2, serial number 1015, connected to power supply 1002 for the procedure, not 1003.
And Matt, that's A firm. So we'll make sure we correct that.
Okay, well, so 1006, air quality monitor 1006 is running off of serial number 1002. So the power supplies are swapped. So just to say, I want everybody clear, air quality monitor 1006 is connected to 1002, and air quality monitor 1015 is connected to power supply 1003.
Okay, Matt, we copy all and appreciate that info, and we'll make sure our stuff is updated.
Copy. I mean, maybe I'm being way too detailed here. You tell me.
No, Matt, that's good. It helps us keep our products up to date. We appreciate the report.
Okay.